This fence is as far as you go. Sergeant Mark Holloway said it before the sun had fully cleared the roofs of downtown Atlanta, his voice flat, public, and practiced, as if he had said worse things in quieter places and gotten away with them. The side entrance of the federal courthouse was still half in shadow, its tall stone walls glowing pale gray in the early morning light. A few courthouse employees moved through the security gate with coffee cups, badge lanyards, and tired faces. Delivery trucks hummed along the curb. Somewhere above the entrance, a flag lifted and settled in the slow Georgia breeze. In front of the temporary black iron fence stood Evelyn Brooks, a black woman in a long dark coat, holding a worn brown leather document case close to her side. She was 46, calm, neatly dressed, and almost impossibly still. Not frozen, not afraid. Still in the way a judge watches a room before anyone realizes court has already begun. Holloway did not know that. To him, she was just a woman who had stepped toward the wrong gate without lowering her eyes fast enough. Behind him stood Officer Brett Collins, pale, broad-shouldered, with a half-smile that seemed borrowed from someone crueler. To Holloway's left was Officer Ryan Keene, younger, cleaner-faced, his hands resting near his belt, his expression uncertain in the thin morning light. 3 uniforms, 3 badges, 1 habit of being obeyed. Evelyn glanced from one badge number to the next, reading each in silence. Holloway noticed and gave a dry laugh. "You writing a complaint in your head?" he asked. Evelyn looked at him directly. "I am remembering who is speaking to me." The air changed. Collins stopped smiling for half a second. Keene looked toward the courthouse door, then away. Holloway stepped closer, not touching her, but filling the space like he believed his shadow had authority to. "Federal property has rules," he said. "You do not walk in here carrying a case and refusing questions." Evelyn's fingers tightened slightly around the leather handle. Inside the case was a yellow sealed envelope stamped with a red federal court seal, a packet that had already passed through hands more careful than his. Beside it lay a black fountain pen that had belonged to her father, a man who once told her that power reveals itself most clearly when it thinks no one important is watching. Evelyn did not explain. "Not yet. Call the Deputy United States Marshal assigned to this entrance," she said. Holloway's mouth curved. Everybody suddenly knows somebody downtown when they get stopped. A few people slowed near the sidewalk. A woman in running shoes turned her head. A clerk at the gate paused with his access card halfway raised. Holloway saw the audience and became more certain of himself. He gave a short order to Collins, and within moments Evelyn was kept beside the temporary fence, her movement limited by the same metal barrier meant to guide visitors safely into court. No shouting, no struggle, just public humiliation delivered with professional posture. Evelyn stood straight, the courthouse steps less than 40 feet away, the sealed envelope still in her case by her side, and above them all, a small security camera on the lamp post watched without blinking. Evelyn had spent most of her life learning when not to explain herself. Explanation, she had discovered, was often treated like begging when it came from the wrong mouth. So she stood beside the temporary fence with her shoulders level, her dark coat moving slightly in the cool morning wind, and let the silence gather around her like evidence. The leather case rested near her right side, close enough for her to protect, far enough that Holloway could pretend it was the reason for all of this. Inside, beneath the sealed envelope, lay a worn fountain pen with a black barrel and a silver clip dulled by age. Her father had carried it through 30 years of teaching high school history in Atlanta, marking essays at the kitchen table long after dinner went cold. He had believed children should learn the Constitution before they learned fear, and he had made Evelyn recite amendments the way other fathers taught baseball scores. When she was 11, he took her to stand outside this same courthouse, though the entrance had looked different then, older, quieter, less guarded. He pointed at the stone steps and told her, "That building belongs to the people, baby, not just the people who get waved through." She remembered the warmth of his hand on her shoulder. She remembered the smell of rain on concrete. She remembered promising herself that one day she would walk through those doors without asking anyone to see her as worthy. Decades later, she had done more than walk through them. She had studied at Spelman, graduated from Yale Law School, prosecuted public corruption, defended voting rights cases, and taken the federal bench with her mother crying softly in the front row. But that morning, she wore no robe. She had no nameplate in front of her, No raised bench. No clerk announcing the room to order. She looked, to Holloway, like someone he could delay without consequence. That was why she remained quiet. Not because she had nothing to say, but because every unnecessary word might give him a ladder out of his own conduct. Collins shifted near the fence, rolling his shoulders as if boredom had weight. "She sure is calm," he muttered. Holloway glanced at him. They always get calm when they think it makes them look important. King did not laugh. His eyes kept moving to the leather case, then to Evelyn's face, then to the courthouse door less than 40 feet away. Something about her posture troubled him. People who lied usually filled the air. Evelyn did not. She simply watched, memorized, and waited. "Name," Holloway said. Evelyn looked at him. "I already requested the Deputy United States Marshal assigned to this entrance." "That was not what I asked. It was what procedure requires." Collins gave a low chuckle. Now she knows procedure. Evelyn turned her eyes to him, and the chuckle died before it became anything larger. "Officer Collins," she said clearly, reading his badge number once, then repeating it with perfect accuracy. Then she looked at Keene. "Officer Keene." Finally, she returned to Holloway. "Sergeant Holloway." The three names seemed to hang between the fence bars. Holloway's face hardened. He was beginning to understand that she was not guessing. She was recording. A courthouse employee slowed at the gate, staring, and Holloway snapped his fingers toward the entrance. "Keep moving." The employee obeyed, but not before glancing at the camera mounted above the lamp post. Evelyn saw the glance. Holloway did not. That was the difference between them. He believed the moment belonged to him because he controlled the fence. Evelyn knew the moment belonged to the record because someone, somewhere, would have to answer for what the camera had already seen. Holloway had built a career out of moments exactly like this one: narrow spaces, uncertain people, and enough official language to make ordinary citizens doubt their own rights. He was 48, white, square-jawed, and proud of the silver in his hair because he believed it made him look seasoned rather than tired. Around the precinct, younger officers called him old school, and he accepted the phrase as praise. To Holloway, old school meant you spoke first, you stepped closer, you made the room adjust to you before anyone else found courage. He had spent 23 years learning which questions sounded like procedure and which silences sounded like guilt. He knew how to write reports that made every decision look cleaner by the time a supervisor read it. He knew how to smile at community meetings, how to shake hands with local business owners, how to stand beside a flag during a news clip and speak about safety as if safety belonged only to people who looked comfortable around him. Officer Brett Collins admired that. Collins was 36, white, broad through the shoulders, and always a little too eager to laugh when Holloway made someone feel small. He had not invented the habit, but he had learned to enjoy its rewards. Staying close to Holloway meant better shifts, easier explanations, and protection when complaints appeared in the system like rain spots on glass. Collins liked to think of himself as practical. He told himself every department had politics, every job had pressure, every uniform required loyalty. But loyalty, in his hands, often looked like cowardice dressed as friendship. Officer Ryan Keene was different, though difference without courage had not helped anyone yet. He was 31, white, newer to the unit, with a clean face and restless eyes that kept betraying him. He had joined the force after his older brother became a firefighter, wanting a life that sounded honorable when described at family dinners. At first, he believed rules were rails that kept everyone safe. Then he learned how often rails could be moved by the person with the strongest voice. Holloway had taught him that hesitation made you look weak. Collins had taught him that laughing at the right time kept attention away from you. But Evelyn Brooks, standing beside that fence, taught him something else without speaking at all. She did not tremble. She did not fill the air with excuses. She watched each man the way a person watches evidence being introduced. Keene shifted his weight and looked again toward the courthouse door. The side entrance remained closed. The stone steps beyond the fence sat clean and empty in the early light, close enough to feel cruel. A black sedan rolled past the curb. A man in a suit slowed, saw the uniforms, then kept walking faster than before. Holloway noticed and seemed pleased. Public discomfort fed his certainty. He turned back to Evelyn and pointed toward the leather case near her feet. "We are going to inspect that," he said. Evelyn looked down at the case, then back at him. "That envelope is sealed by federal order." Collins laughed once, short and dismissive. That is a new one. Holloway smiled without warmth. Everybody has a story. Evelyn's expression did not change. And every story has a record, she said. Keene heard the sentence and felt something cold move through his stomach. Holloway did not. He reached for control the way some men reach for breath, unaware that the harder he held the moment, the more completely it was becoming his testimony. Holloway moved toward the leather case with the confident impatience of a man reaching for a drawer in his own house. Evelyn did not step back. She lowered her eyes only long enough to watch the distance between his hand and the brass clasp, then lifted her gaze to meet his again. "Do not break the seal on that envelope," she said. The sentence was calm, almost gentle, and that made Collins laugh harder than he should have. "Listen to that," he said, turning his head toward Keene. "Now she is giving evidence instructions." Keene did not answer. His attention had fixed on the red court seal visible through the narrow opening of the case. A waxy mark stamped across the flap of a yellow envelope resting beneath a folder. It did not look like something bought from an office supply store. It looked official in the quiet way official things often looked, plain, exact, and dangerous when mishandled. Holloway noticed Keene staring and frowned. "Do not get nervous because she uses big words," he said. Evelyn turned slightly, enough for the morning light to touch the side of her face. "Sergeant Mark Holloway, badge number 4712, she said. His expression hardened. She looked next at Collins. "Officer Brett Collins, badge number 6289. Collins's smile faded into something thinner. Then she looked at Keene. "Officer Ryan Keene, badge number 9135. Keene swallowed. No one had asked her to memorize them. No one had given her paper. She had read the numbers once and carried them like facts already entered into record. "You trying to scare us?" Collins asked. Evelyn shook her head. "I am being accurate." The words passed through the fence bars and settled around them. Holloway bent toward the case, but Evelyn's voice stopped him again. "That packet is sealed by federal order. If you believe you have lawful authority to open it, call the Deputy United States Marshal assigned to this entrance and state your reason on the record." The phrase "on the record" struck Keene visibly. His eyes moved to the camera on the lamppost, then to the second camera above the side door, then back to Holloway. Collins saw it too and grew quieter. Holloway, however, heard only challenge. Men like him often confused caution with surrender when it came from others, but insult when it came from themselves. "I decide what gets inspected here," he said. Evelyn answered without raising her voice. "No, Sergeant. Procedure decides that. You are supposed to follow it, not become it." A delivery cart rattled along the curb, its wheels clicking over a crack in the concrete. The sound filled the pause. A courthouse employee standing near the gate slowly lowered her access card, as if even plastic should not make noise now. Holloway looked around and realized the audience had changed. They were no longer watching Evelyn to see what she had done wrong. They were watching him to see what he would do next. That realization made his face go colder. He straightened and gestured toward Collins. "Secure the case where it is," he said. Collins reached down, but he did not touch the envelope. Not after hearing her read his number. Not after seeing Keene's face. Not after noticing the cameras himself. Evelyn saw the hesitation and understood exactly what it meant. The wall was still standing, but the first stone inside it had shifted. The longer Evelyn stood beside the fence, the more the morning began to gather witnesses. Not a crowd, not yet, but enough passing faces to make the air feel crowded. A man in a charcoal suit slowed near the curb with a phone in one hand, then thought better of lifting it. Two courthouse employees whispered near the badge reader. A delivery driver paused beside his cart, pretending to check an invoice, while watching everything from the corner of his eye. Holloway saw them all and mistook their silence for approval. That was one of his oldest habits. He believed quiet meant people agreed with him, when often it only meant they were afraid of becoming next. Evelyn kept her back straight. The metal of the temporary fence felt cold near her sleeve, and the Georgia wind moved through the bars in thin, restless breaths. Her leather case remained by her feet, still closed enough to protect the yellow envelope, still visible enough to make Keene uneasy. Collins stood near it with one hand hovering above the handle, no longer smiling as freely. Holloway began speaking louder, shaping his voice for the people pretending not to listen. "This is what happens when folks walk onto restricted federal property and then act surprised there are rules." Evelyn looked at him, then at the courthouse steps less than 40 feet away. Rules protect everyone when they are followed correctly, she said. They protect nothing when they are used as a costume. Collins made a sound under his breath, but it lacked confidence. Keene shifted again. His eyes moved to the lamppost camera, then to the courthouse employee near the gate, then to Evelyn's face. He looked like a man standing on ice and hearing the first crack. Holloway noticed his hesitation and turned on him with a glance. "You have something to add, Keene?" Keene straightened. "No, Sergeant." The answer came too quickly. Evelyn heard it. Holloway heard it too, and anger tightened around his mouth. He needed the morning to feel simple again. He needed Evelyn to look confused, defensive, grateful for permission, anything except composed. "People always claim they know the law," he said, "until real law shows up." Evelyn's gaze did not move. "Then call it." The words were so quiet that only the nearest people heard them, but they passed through Holloway like a match dropped into dry paper. "Excuse me," he said. "Call the Deputy United States Marshal," Evelyn repeated. "Call the clerk. Call anyone whose duty is connected to this entrance. Put your decision where it belongs." The silence after that was different. It no longer belonged to fear. It belonged to measurement. Someone near the gate cleared her throat and looked toward the side door. Holloway stepped closer to the case, not touching the sealed envelope, but standing over it, as if possession could be performed by shadow alone. "You do not decide who gets called," he said. Evelyn lowered her eyes to the badge on his chest, then lifted them back to his face. "Neither does pride." For the first time, Holloway did not answer immediately. His authority had always depended on speed, on forcing people to react before they could think. But Evelyn was not reacting. She was waiting, and every second she waited made the cameras, the witnesses, the badge numbers, and the sealed envelope feel less like separate details and more like pieces of a record closing around him. The wind moved through the fence with a thin metallic hum, and for a moment the whole morning seemed to narrow around that sound. Evelyn looked down at the cold metal near her wrist, then passed it to the courthouse steps rising less than 40 feet away. 40 feet. That was all. A distance shorter than a school bus, shorter than the walk from a kitchen table to a front door, shorter than the distance between a promise and the day that promise is tested. The stone steps were pale under the Atlanta sun, clean and quiet, waiting as if nothing unusual had happened outside them. People still entered through the main door. Shoes still crossed polished thresholds. Access cards still clicked against readers. The building continued to function, and that was what made the moment hurt in a deeper way. Injustice did not always stop the world. Sometimes it happened while coffee stayed warm and elevators kept moving. Evelyn closed her eyes for one breath. Not long enough to appear defeated. Just long enough to find the voice inside her that did not belong to fear. Her father was there, as he always was in moments when anger tried to become the loudest thing in the room. She could see him in his old tan jacket, standing at the kitchen counter, shining his shoes before school, telling her that dignity was not silence, but control. He had been a veteran before he became a teacher, a man who believed discipline meant protecting the vulnerable, not dominating them. When Evelyn was a girl, he would tap 2 fingers against his chest and say, "Honor is not what you wear, Evie. It is what you do when someone cannot stop you." She opened her eyes again. Holloway was still watching her, waiting for a crack. Collins pretended to adjust his belt. Keene stared at the ground as if the concrete had begun asking him questions. Evelyn breathed in slowly through her nose. The air carried exhaust from the street, damp stone, and the faint smell of cut grass from a small courthouse planter nearby. Ordinary smells. Ordinary morning. Extraordinary record. She looked toward the lamppost camera, then the side door camera, then the courthouse employee who had not moved from the gate. The woman's hand was still near her access card, but her eyes were fixed on Evelyn now, not with pity, but with recognition that something was deeply wrong. Evelyn did not ask for help with her face. She did not perform suffering for strangers. She simply stood, straight-backed, patient, and impossible to reduce. Holloway grew restless under that patience. "You done making your point?" he asked. Evelyn turned her head slightly. "I have not made one yet." The answer unsettled him more than anger would have. Anger he understood. Fear he preferred. But this calm was different. It felt procedural. It felt official. It felt like a door somewhere was already opening. Then, From inside the courthouse, a sound cut through the morning. The side entrance buzzed. A lock released. Keene looked up first. Collins turned second. Holloway frowned, annoyed that the building itself had interrupted him. Evelyn did not move. The door began to open, and warm courthouse light spilled across the cold concrete toward the fence. The side door opened slowly, and the first person through was not the Deputy United States Marshal. It was Samuel Hayes, the senior courtroom clerk, gray-haired, narrow-shouldered, carrying a folder under one arm and a paper coffee cup in the other. He stepped into the morning with the distracted hurry of a man already late to 3 things at once. Then he saw the fence. He saw Holloway. He saw Collins standing near the leather case. He saw Keene with his face turned pale in the light. Last, he saw Evelyn. The coffee cup slipped slightly in his hand, not enough to fall, just enough for a dark line to spill over the white lid. His mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. The courtyard seemed to pause around him. Holloway turned with irritation sharpened into authority. "Sir, step back inside," he said. "This area is being handled." Samuel did not step back. His eyes were fixed on Evelyn's face with a horror that grew deeper by the second. "Judge Brooks." The 2 words crossed the concrete softer than a shout, but they struck harder than any command Holloway had given all morning. Collins froze. Keene looked from Samuel to Evelyn as if the ground had moved beneath his shoes. Holloway's expression changed last, because pride is always the slowest thing in the room to understand danger. He looked at Evelyn again, really looked this time, not at the coat, not at the case, not at the black woman he had decided was a problem, but at the stillness he had mistaken for weakness. Evelyn did not correct Samuel. She did not nod dramatically. She simply held his gaze and said, "Good morning, Mr. Hayes." Samuel went white. "Your Honor, I am so sorry. We were told you had already entered through chambers." Holloway's throat worked once. The badge on his chest caught the sunlight, but now it looked exposed, not powerful. Before anyone could speak again, a second figure emerged from the side door. Deputy United States Marshal Dana Price walked out with 2 marshals behind her, her navy jacket neat, her face composed until she saw Evelyn by the fence. Her eyes moved once across the scene, reading it with trained speed. Evelyn, the fence, the officers, the leather case, the cameras, the witnesses. Then her gaze landed on the yellow envelope visible inside the case, its red seal untouched. Something in her expression tightened. "Nobody touches that packet," she said. Collins stepped away from the case as if the words had weight. Holloway tried to recover, but his voice came out thinner than before. "Deputy Marshal, we had an unidentified individual attempting to access federal property with sealed materials." Dana Price looked at him, then at Evelyn, then back at him. "That unidentified individual is the presiding federal judge assigned to the sealed matter this morning." The silence widened. Traffic murmured beyond the curb. A flag rope tapped softly against the pole above them. Keene closed his eyes for a second, as if replaying every minute from the beginning and finding no place where he could escape what he had allowed. Holloway swallowed. "We were following procedure." Evelyn finally spoke, her voice even, almost quiet enough to make everyone lean in. "Procedure was the first thing I asked for." Dana Price stepped closer to the leather case without touching it. "Your Honor, is the warrant packet intact?" Evelyn looked down at the envelope, then at the 3 officers. "It is." Dana's face hardened with professional restraint. "Then we need to move this inside immediately." Samuel Hayes stared at Holloway as if seeing not a uniform, but a problem that had grown legs and walked straight into federal jurisdiction. And for the first time that morning, the 3 badges near the fence did not look like protection. They looked like names already written in a file. Inside the courthouse security office, the air felt warmer, but no one seemed able to breathe normally. The room was small, with beige walls, a row of monitors, a metal table, and a window that looked back toward the side entrance where the temporary fence still stood in the morning sun. Evelyn sat upright in a plain chair, while Deputy United States Marshal Dana Price documented the condition of the sealed envelope. Samuel Hayes stood near the wall, his folder pressed against his chest, still shaken by the sight outside. Holloway, Collins, and Keene stood on the opposite side of the room, no longer arranged like a wall. They looked separate now, 3 men surrounded by the consequences of the same decision. Dana spoke into a recorder with careful precision, noting the time, the location, the visible seal, and the fact that the packet had remained intact. Evelyn placed her leather case on the table and opened it herself. The brass clasp clicked softly. No one moved. She lifted the yellow envelope with both hands and set it beneath the overhead light. The red seal caught the glow, unbroken, official, silent. Dana looked at Samuel. "Witness." Samuel nodded. "Witnessed." Then Dana opened the packet according to protocol, slowly, cleanly, with the kind of care Holloway had mocked less than 20 minutes earlier. Inside were federal documents, signed orders, sworn statements, complaint summaries, courthouse camera requests, and a warrant authorization tied to an investigation that had been moving long before sunrise. Dana read the first page, and her expression did not change, but the room did. Holloway saw his name. Then Collins saw his. Keene saw his last, and his shoulders lowered as if he had been carrying a weight he had refused to name. Evelyn watched them without satisfaction. She had seen that look before, the look powerful people got when they realized the record had been waiting longer than their excuses. Holloway cleared his throat. "Your Honor, there has been a misunderstanding." Evelyn turned to him. "No," she said. "There has been a record." The sentence did not need volume. It crossed the table and settled into every corner of the room. Dana Price slid a second document beside the first. "These materials concern alleged misconduct, false statements, and obstruction connected to multiple civilian complaints," she said. Collins looked toward Holloway, but Holloway was staring at the paper like it had betrayed him. Keene finally spoke, his voice low. "I should have called the marshal when she asked." Holloway snapped his eyes toward him, but the old authority no longer reached across the room. Dana looked at Keene. "That will be included in your statement." Outside the office window, commuters continued moving past the courthouse steps, unaware that a whole career could begin to unravel behind a quiet pane of glass. Evelyn touched the fountain pen in her case once, then closed the lid. She did not lecture them. She did not tell them what kind of men they had become. The law would ask those questions now. Dana collected their access cards and instructed them to remain available for formal interviews. Holloway looked at Evelyn one last time, searching for anger, for triumph, for anything that would make her seem smaller than the truth in front of him. He found none. She stood, adjusted the sleeve of her dark coat, and picked up the leather case. "Deputy Marshal," she said, "please preserve the exterior footage." Dana nodded. "Already in progress, Your Honor." Evelyn walked toward the door, leaving the open packet on the table behind her, and the three officers finally understood that the fence had never held her nearly as tightly as their own choices now held them. By the time Evelyn stepped back outside, the morning had changed color. The sun had risen above the courthouse roof, turning the stone steps from pale gray to warm gold, and the temporary fence cast long, thin shadows across the concrete like lines someone had drawn and forgotten to erase. People still moved through the entrance with briefcases, coffee cups, and folded documents, but their eyes traveled differently now. They glanced at the security office window. They glanced at the fence. They glanced at Evelyn, not with the curiosity of people watching trouble, but with the quiet respect people give when they realize they almost misunderstood the center of the story. She stood for a moment near the side door, the leather case in her left hand, the fountain pen safe inside, the sealed packet no longer sealed, but finally where it belonged. Behind the glass, Deputy United States Marshal Dana Price continued her work with steady professionalism. Access cards were logged. Statements were requested. Camera footage was preserved. Holloway, Collins, and Keene remained inside, separated by a few feet and a silence that felt larger than the room. Their badges had not vanished, but something around them had. The automatic belief, the easy protection, the habit of being accepted before being examined. Holloway sat with his hands folded on the metal table, staring at nothing. Collins kept looking toward the monitors as if the recorded images might become kinder if he waited long enough. Keene spoke softly to Dana, answering each question with the expression of a man who had finally found the courage to tell the truth too late to be proud of it. Evelyn did not watch for long. Justice was not meant to be enjoyed like punishment. Her father had taught her that too. It was meant to restore weight to what had been made invisible. Samuel Hayes approached slowly from the side entrance, his folder still tucked under one arm. "Your Honor," he said, voice low, "I am sorry we did not reach you sooner." Evelyn looked toward the fence. You opened the door when it mattered. Samuel followed her gaze. For a few seconds, neither spoke. A city bus sighed at the curb. A flag rope tapped against the pole above them. Somewhere down the block, a street vendor called out breakfast orders to morning workers who had no idea what had just happened within 40 feet of the courthouse steps. Evelyn walked to the temporary fence and paused beside the place where she had stood. The metal still held the coolness of the morning. She did not touch it with anger. She simply looked at it, then past it, toward the doors of the building her father once told her belonged to the people. Dana emerged behind her and said, "They have been temporarily removed from courthouse access pending formal review." Evelyn nodded once. No speech. No victory smile. No need to make the moment louder than it was. She adjusted the cuff of her dark coat, lifted the leather case, and stepped through the gate that had been used to stop her less than an hour earlier. This time, no one blocked the way. This time, the guard stepped aside. Inside the courthouse, marble floors carried her footsteps toward the elevators. Outside, the fence remained in the sun, empty now, holding nothing but the memory of a mistake. And in the security office behind her, 3 badges rested on a metal table, lighter than the truth that had finally passed through the door.